We're at 2:05 by my clock, or 2:06, depending on the computer. But thank you all for coming today to talk about our topic for today, which is ways to involve the community in volunteer-led efforts. And if this is your first time here, thank you for coming. And for those of you who've been here before, thank you for coming back. We hope to share information. And Megan, I believe, has our first question for today, right?
Yes, I do. It's good to see everybody. So I think, we just want to start off the conversation just by getting a gauge on how volunteer teams currently engage community at their events. And I think also we can kind of tag on to that, how people are feeling about getting back into doing their in-person community events. Any initial thoughts? I can share one, maybe to kind of get our juices flowing a little bit. We're getting back to in-person events just in the next couple of weeks, and then we have a couple more in July. And one of the events that we're bringing back that we did pre-pandemic is called our On Tap events, and they are just really informal get-togethers at local breweries. And so one of the ways that we engage, I think, members is that if you bring a non-perishable item to donate to a local food shelf, we will buy you a free beer. And so I think, it's not just coming and, getting a free beer, but it's, how can you just get a little bit more engagement from them? You can talk a little bit about, hunger and food scarcity issues for senior adults, and where we're donating the food, so it's a little bit more tangible than just having beer. Is anybody else kind of getting back to in-person in the next few weeks, testing the waters? Elaine?
Yeah, just dovetailing on your event that you said, you all may know that Connecticut does not have a major football or baseball team like most of you. We do have UConn women's basketball though, which I know you've heard of. We set the bar for that one in Connecticut, but we have the Yard Goats baseball team. They're not, they're not the Mets and the Yankees and the Red Sox, but they are in Hartford. So this Saturday, we have our first in-person game there, and we have a couple hundred people that have been invited to attend free on AARP, and our volunteers lead the charge. They check people in, they greet. We have 2 new volunteers that are going to be shadowing, one that we just appointed very recently, and then we're going to have a tabling event in the concourse where we'll probably talk about some new legislation where people can save for retirement at a younger age and above, about 600,000 people in Connecticut. So it's fun and games, literally fun and games. And it falls into what we say, fun with purpose, but our volunteers will be there in full force, leading the charge, engaging the community.
Great. Oh yes, jazz hands. How about are teams looking at doing things a little bit differently than they did before? Are there changes that you've made, kind of under the philosophy of work smarter, not harder?
I can talk about a little bit of the work that's going on in Detroit. Like everyone else, we want to take advantage of the nice weather, and it took a long time for nice weather to come to Michigan. So we have a river walk, and so we're using that as a weekly tabling event and a weekly walking event. And so today is the 14th? By gosh, it is. we have Ernestine Shepherd, the oldest bodybuilder that was here maybe 4 years ago. And so we brought her back, and she headlined the Riverwalk today. And so many of our walking experts are down well, it was earlier this morning, so they were downtown at the Riverwalk taking advantage of that. And it's a free venue. It's a venue that people certainly are able to go to. And there's a big push in the Detroit area for enhancing green spaces and utilizing the green space and utilizing the Riverwalk. So I saw an ad where AARP was on the news a couple times over the past weekend, because we had another event last weekend on the Riverwalk. And so we're just using that as an advantage to increase visibility. It's a safe environment, open air. We've had wonderful weather. It's wonderful here today. And so we're using that as a weekly opportunity to show up in the community, have information for the community, and certainly let them know that AARP is still here in Michigan.
That's awesome. I think we have almost all of our events are outdoor events too, like coming up in the summer, and it seems a great way to dip our toes back in. Any other comments or questions?
I can talk about what we want to do.
Yeah.
We haven't really had an opportunity to get large groups together yet. However, one of the things that we've done in the past, which was very successful, was what we referred to as an AARP Blitz, where a group of staff and volunteers would go to a town far away from the state office. And it was a noon to noon, so it was an overnight. And we would arrive in the afternoon and meet with local volunteers, and then have a caregiver's respite dinner in the evening. And then the next morning, there would be a breakfast brunch where legislators from that area were invited to come and listen to legislation that we'd recently got passed and what we hope to do for the next session. And then provide a couple of talks on fraud or Social Security or anything else that's open to the public after that, and then have invite those folks all to come to lunch. It was great fun, and it was such a nice way to get out into the hinterlands of New Mexico. We're a really big state, and we only have 2 million people. So it's really hard to make sure that we're getting into those rural areas. But we went up to Farmington, which is in the northwest corner of the state, for one of these, and then down to Las Cruces, which is near the Mexican border, for another one. They were hugely successful. We did get volunteers based on those efforts. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of coordination, but we just made it fun. And we're hoping to do that, maybe a little differently this time with different subjects, but really just want to get out there, because having volunteers spread across the state is really important for large states with small populations.
Thanks, Jackie. Any other thoughts?
Megan, you want to repeat the question again for those who may have joined us?
Sure. That's a great idea. Sorry. Yeah, it's just around how we are incorporating or including community in our volunteer-led events, I think. And then kind of broadly also just, I think, talking about getting back to in-person events, experiences of kind of, as you're doing in-person stuff, are there things that you're doing differently? Are there things that ways that you're trying to enhance community involvement? Maybe better than you did before?
I'll tell you one thing that we tried in Kentucky this summer. We thought that it would be a good idea to have ice cream in a park, because the parks are really good things. And it would be a place to be out, and it's a nice place to be safe. And, all of our volunteers said this would be a good thing to do. we've almost given up the idea now after spending 2 months trying to plan it, because we can't find an ice cream truck that's willing to come in an inflated gasoline price environment. And people don't want to give the cheap ice cream. And then we've had so many shootings in the parks that our people are saying, well, maybe we'll do something tied to a brain walk and back in the spring, something, maybe even next year. But it's been interesting to try to plan things with COVID coming along, and you never know if you're going to be in the red or not, and whatever. It was a good idea, but it hasn't worked so far. Our next thing is going to be a shredding event. So hopefully that will work out in August, and maybe we can get ice cream at the shredding event.
Thanks, Deborah. Linda, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a couple things I was going to mention. One was a placemaking event. There was staff involved, so it was with another partner organization, and we were, putting in some sidewalks and things like that to bus areas and across the green. So that was one event where we were outside and safely distanced. That was a couple of weeks ago. And then I'm planning a coffee at one of the coffee shops and just having get-togethers. So we're just kind of slowly getting things, back in order, just testing the waters to see how it's going to go. Biking, that kind of thing is in the planning stages, but we're just kind of waiting to make sure that this latest okay is really going to stick. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Antoine?
Somebody asked about a placemaking event. So if you have community grants or you have events in towns where they want to make it safer for walking and biking in an area, then you go and you propose a sidewalk, you put it in chalk and temporary paint, and just demonstrate to the community what it might do, and how it might be increase safety in that particular area. So that's a placemaking event.
Thanks, Linda. Antoine, you have your hand up?
Yep, take yourself off mute. So there are a few events that we've actually participated in. So we've had some tables at some events already, as a way, as some folks have said, to kind of dip our toe back into that environment. Of course, following all the guidelines, and then up until just a few days ago, that if anything was in red, we couldn't do it. But now, that's on the table even. So one of the things, so we're going kind of, if you want to say, flipping a switch back on July 1st, as getting back out into more in-person events and activities. But we have taken the opportunity to try to develop more volunteer-led events and things. We have a leadership academy that Jesse is aware of as well, and other folks, where we help to get nudge some volunteers along the way in terms of taking more ownership and leadership in different events and things. So those things will start to come to fruition later this year. And one of the things that we've done, that we were doing before the pandemic, that we are continuing to do and looking forward to restarting it, is, and I may have mentioned it before at some point, I'm quite sure I did, we have a walking group that meets at a mall. So since 2015, they've been meeting once a month. Well, once a month it started off, then a few years ago, a couple of years before the pandemic, we went to twice a month at 6 a.m. At a mall to exercise for an hour with the professional fitness instructor. And about a year before the pandemic started, we created a Facebook group for that group because it was really hyper focused on LA in the Black community, West LA, Crenshaw area. And not knowing, of course, the pandemic was going to happen the following year, but because it did, we were able to not miss a session and go straight into virtual. But now that we're coming out of it for this group, our first in-person session in 2+ years is going to be July 12th back at the mall. And at the same time, we are incorporating a virtual experience as well, because when the last session we had on March 10th, 2020 at the mall, we had about 80 people there. And we had about maybe 100 people in the Facebook group. Now we have 705 people in the Facebook group. We don't know who's going to show up though. So, it's kind of, we know we now have this other audience that we still have to try to engage and work with while going back in person at the mall. And we're actually looking at other locations. So we're trying to move it now, a couple of locations in the city to give people more of an opportunity now that there are more people from around not only the city, but they're looking at the demographics in the group last week, and there's someone from Australia and there's someone from Italy. It's like 4 countries. I mean, so some airports call themselves international without that many flights. So we're international. But that's something that we're looking to do as we come out, that we've tried to learn, and also we've continued to listen to the group as far as what times do you prefer. We started doing additional workshops in addition to the walks. So after the walk, we would have a workshop. The next one coming up is June 28th on healthy sleep and healthy living. We've done a workshop on blood pressure. We've done a workshop on, of course, our DIY, caregiving, and fraud, and all those other things. So just trying to continue to engage them. But now we have to keep in mind, even if we're in person, we have this whole nother audience that we have to keep informed, keep engaged, keep connected while still having in-person sessions, which we've kind of figured that out. But it's the beauty of all of that is that there's a group of volunteers that we work with who are our sounding board about, hey, we're looking at doing this. And they'll tell us right off the bat, that's not going to work. Don't do it. Or give us feedback, tweak this, do that. And they're pretty much right on point every time. So that's just a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of other things that I don't know that's going on in California, but those are some of the things that I'm familiar with.
Antoine, I think that's a really good point of how to keep the virtual audience engaged as you start going back to in-person events. And I know for our we sponsor our St. Paul Jazz Festival, and we've been sponsoring virtual concerts over the last couple of years. And so this year, we're going to be back in person in 2 weeks at the Jazz Festival with a tent and table. And we're doing like targeted communication to people who have joined us virtually to try to drive them to come out and see us in person. And like we have no idea, if it's going to work. And obviously there's people virtually, internationally who, aren't going to make it. But we're excited to see if we can kind of get some of the virtual audience to convert to doing, more stuff with us in person. But we're also, we're planning out some of our voter engagement work. And we've just had this great idea within the last couple of days about how to replicate some of the stuff that we're doing in person through social media as well, to try to engage virtually, in a different way for voter engagement. So I think we can go Bettina and then Kelly.
Yeah, someone was mentioning the ice cream party at the park and how others were concerned about their safety. Understandable. What about the possibility of partnering with your local police department? And so there's your safety right there. And maybe they could bring out a police car or some kind of vehicles for grandchildren to tour and find out more about what's going on, and also have the ice cream. You can maybe even get a fire truck to come out for the kids. So it could be multi-generational, it could be safe, and it could be PR for both the police, the fire department, and AARP. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, Bettina, that reminds me of like National Night Out. That's a national thing, right? It's not just Minnesota. Okay, so we have National Night Out block parties where you can invite police officers and fire trucks to your neighborhood block party. So yeah, that's a great idea. Kelly?
Fun.
Yeah, thanks. So our volunteers are kind of leading the way on getting back into in-person, particularly our Columbus, our Central Ohio team. They are planning they're calling it Stepping Out, Stepping Up. So they're asking all of the current volunteers who are on our books at least to come to an event. Excuse me. It's at a park shelter, so it can be it's indoors, and it's closed enough that if there's bad weather, they're okay, but they can open the doors and of course, have really good distance. But this is theirs soup to nuts. So there'll be the current volunteers, and they're asking each of those volunteers to bring along a friend. They're also using Hub Dialer to reach out to the Central Ohio volunteers who are on the books to try to bump the attendance for that. So they've that it's one of their go-to events. So they're very good at getting it taken care of, and really looking forward to seeing how this one goes. And then our Cincinnati team, we have one of the fitness parks in Cincinnati. So they're going to do their volunteer reconvening at the fitness park as part of just trying to get back together, trying to get everybody in motion. And then kind of on the heels of those, we have our listening tour for voter engagement. We're doing 5 different stops. We have 3 or 4 volunteer roles outlined. We put it on Microsoft Forms so our volunteers can just go in, select their location, select the role they want to play, and we're getting some folks back into action that way. So a few things going on that we're tiptoeing in, but I think we'll be up and running pretty soon. Our Central Ohio volunteer team and our Cincinnati team are really leading the way.
And Kelly, there's a question in the chat about what happens at the Steppin' Out event.
Mm-hmm. The team has a leadership team, speakers bureau, and even within the speakers bureau, fraud, caregiving, an advocacy lead, an outreach lead. And those leads basically make presentations, not, look at the slide, make a presentation, but they are engaging. If you know anything about our Fraud Watch team, they're a very engaging group. They're actually going to be, Bettina, I can't remember, the 24th?
Not this Thursday, but next Thursday, the 23rd. And they're fired up.
So that's going to be on the, help me with that also, Bettina.
It's the Fun with Fraudsters, the Fraud Watch Clinic. And they're not doctors, but they play them on Zoom.
Right.
It's on the fast track.
I'll put the flyer. Oh, sorry, Bob. I'll put the flyer in the chat if anybody's interested. It's gonna be fun.
So we'll just have those groups make quick presentations, lots of networking. They're very outgoing. They will welcome people in. And then they'll have, again, just those next action steps, like here's where we're going to be for the voter tour stops. Here are some possibilities coming up. They still have virtual opportunities available. So they'll be able to offer some next steps to anybody who's ready to re-engage or join the team. Does that help?
Thanks, Kelly.
Yes.
And
So
I put the flyer up.
I'll take it from here so we can ask another question. Although many of the responses to the next couple of questions have already been addressed, we want to put the questions out there so that we can get you thinking of some other things. So my question is, do you obtain the community support that you need, or would you like to have more community support? And I'll kind of kick that off by saying that one of the things that we usually benefit from, and I know many of you across the US can benefit from, are the relationships with sororities and fraternities. And we are happy to have them as part of our shredding opportunities, one this coming Saturday with Delta Sigma Theta, because a lot of their missions line up with what AARP does. So they will do most of the work. They will provide the volunteers. They will do most of the work, and all of our volunteers have to do is maybe show up and have a table. And so because this is in line with what the sororities need to achieve in their annual goals, they are willing to partner with us. And I think we have a couple of these scheduled for this year. And these are certainly big draws for the community, and especially coming out of the pandemic, people have stuff that they want to get shredded. So is anybody else taking advantage of community support in those ways? And what steps are you taking to ensure that the support is available? Anyone? Antoine, your hand is up. I don't know if it's up from last time or if you want to contribute.
Okay, while people, oh, Elaine, is your hand up this time?
Yeah. You know, we've never had a problem with community support in my 10 years here so far. You know, when we do discounts, we've really maximized it. I don't know if you're familiar with the Beardsley Zoo, but it's world famous in our state in any case. It's not the Bronx Zoo, but it's second to it. Where we used to do in person on Fridays, starting in May through September, free admission, and then we'd have tabling there. Now we've done a lot of virtual behind the scenes, volunteer hosted for that. And I think we'll get back to in person, you know, eventually there. That's been a great venue. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Shoreline in Connecticut, but the Mystic Aquarium and the Mystic Seaport, you know, are known places in Connecticut where we've done a similar kind of thing. Now we've done behind the scenes, and maybe we'll maintain a hybrid, you know, example of that, because a lot of people showed up. I mean, who doesn't want to watch penguins, you know, running around either in person or behind the scenes, that kind of stuff. And then museums, the Athenaeum in Hartford, Connecticut is one of the oldest art museums in the country. And we did a virtual on that, but we have done, you know, free come to the museum for that. Certainly libraries, we've done a ton of stuff, senior centers. So I've never seen a problem of not having enough community partnerships. And we just try to maximize it to the best of our ability. And they're happy to have us do that.
Thanks, Elaine. I think somewhere in the chat, I saw something about utilizing outside spaces. They are at a premium right now. Has anybody taken advantage of outside spaces as we move from quarantine into in-person events to take advantage of community support? Mary?
So we are just now dipping our toes into the water for in-person. We have scheduled 2 nature walks, 2 back-to-back in July on the same day, back-to-back, and then 2 that will be in September. And the registration is going to be limited to about 23 people because the person doing the nature walks wants to be able to ensure that people have, you know, a hands-on experience and that they can see everything. And we're also getting back into our ice cream nights. We're going to have 2 in July and 1 in August from the different communities. We have 1 in Concord, 1 in Manchester. Well, it'll be Merrimack, and the other on the seacoast. And those are usually well attended. We are doing a registration. So hopefully we can get an idea of the numbers, and we generally have a table with all kinds of information about AARP. So that's about it, other than we are trying to plan some in-person meetings, but we're still keeping our virtual meeting as a placeholder just in case. But we are, we're kind of excited, and those first meetings are going to be, hey, it's great to see you again. Bring somebody with you that wants to be involved in AARP or get to know a little bit about us, and just really reconnecting. And probably the most stressful thing that we're going to discuss is where we're going to hold our meetings and at what time and day.
And what state are you from, Mary?
I'm from New Hampshire.
Okay, thank you. Antoine? And thanks for putting Soul Steppers out there so people can take advantage of it.
Yes, I think, Mary, when you joined us, it was probably when we were on the California page, and it was open to any and everybody to come. At the beginning of 2021, we shifted back to the private group. Now you have to be a member of the group in order to see the recordings, all the previous recordings, and all the other stuff that's there. But that's not why I raised my hand. So I raised my hand because we talk about open spaces, and in here in California, we have done a couple of events at zoos. I think in San Diego and the Bay Area. Kind of a general learn about. I think one of them was even kind of stretched to like animals' activities are related to human activity in terms of the brain. I think it was. It's like, for those who remember Stretch Armstrong, we really stretched that one quite far, but that was something that happened. But we're actually planning to have some volunteer meetings in those open spaces, because people feel a little bit more comfortable having that space and not being on top of each other. And then we tried to, like in San Diego, at the end of this month, we're going to have we're going to have a barbecue with the volunteers. And it's just an opportunity to bring folks together, because they haven't really seen each other in 2+ years for the most part, and start to reintroduce them to each other, but also introduce some of the new folks to the team, because there have been new people that have come on board during this time that never got a chance to physically meet each other. So we're doing that in San Diego. We're also going to do it in the Los Angeles area, where we have multiple teams, but we're going to do it we're going to do it individually by team. So it's not like bringing all the volunteers in LA County to one spot. We're going to have the Soul Stepper team meet together, and this other team meet together, and then sometimes we may have teams, the smaller teams get together, but the idea is to bring folks together in those parks, in those locations where there's space and it's public use, to be able to talk to them, have them meet each other, re-meet each other, and also plan some of the things that we're going to be doing moving forward. So yeah, that's a little bit of it.
Thank you for sharing. These are some great suggestions. Mary, I think Kathy Kynes asked you about that ice cream, and what are you getting people to do to register to eat some ice cream?
Okay, we're doing it through CVent. I mean, once I really don't know how many we're going to have. Our ice cream nights have been really great. We've gone as almost up to 400 people at one place prior to the quarantine. So in a couple of places that we did call, where we've had previous ice cream nights, when I mentioned the numbers that they had the last time, they kind of shied away because they don't really have the staff. So we're trying to see I'm not sure if we can keep it under 200, but I got a feeling it might be a little bit more, but we'll see. Well, they generally will register though, through CVent. And once they hear about it, it's going to spread like wildfire. In New Hampshire, we love our ice cream.
Clearly, so much so that you'll register on CVent for it. I'm just shaking my head. That's awesome.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jesse, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, we have a volunteer in Northern Virginia who had the idea this summer to get a table at a local farmer's market. So she's kind of taking the lead on that. And so her and other volunteers will be there every week at this farmer's market. And I just thought it was a really great idea because it's a different way to do a tabling event. And it's also got like built-in cadence for tabling. Normally we're at community events that happen, you know, once a year. So I think that like just got started, but I just think it's a really creative idea, I think, to think about tabling. So I'm excited to see how that goes. And, you know, hopefully they don't get too hot later this month and in July.
That is an excellent idea, because I'm sure in most cities, there's some kind of farmer's market, either inside, outside, or a combination of both. So thank you for adding that to the conversation. Deborah, you want to take your question?
Yes, I think I will. Since I know Kelly has already kind of brought us up to speed on some of the things that you're doing in terms of finding out what the community wants, and you're trying to assess that. We're trying to figure out how do we do that? What's the best way to find out what our community needs in this difficult time? Any suggestions?
I always think a great first step is just listening to our volunteer teams and talking to them first, which I'm sure is the OVE approved answer as well.
OVE approved answers don't work here.
Yeah, whenever I have the chance, I like to ask my volunteers what they're thinking, you know, what's going on in their communities. And it's always super helpful. And like Antoine said before, I think sometimes we'll have ideas that the staff think is really great. And then we run it by a volunteer and they're like, no, thank you. I'm like, okay, I'm glad that we talked to you first. What do you want to do? And then it always makes it better.
Somebody, Mary Roberge put, how about doing listening posts at an event? And we haven't had listening posts. Well, we haven't had opportunities for listening posts in their traditional way. So this might be an opportunity to do that. So that's an excellent suggestion, Mary. Elaine?
Yeah, Jesse, dovetailing there, ask the volunteers. We have 7 regional impact teams in Connecticut, and they are comprised, of course, of volunteers that are living in that area, you know, and who knows the community, local community, better than the volunteers that live there. So we rely on them, Jesse, you know, in these regional areas to tell us what the community needs. And it's the raison d'etre, really, of the teams.
We found that we can use CVent post-session and post-event surveys to help us figure out what the community will support. And yes, we ask our volunteers, and a number of our volunteers are sorority and fraternity members, and so they've got a wider footprint. But at the same time, there's so many different areas in our communities. We wanted to make sure that we get input from more people, and it's a challenge. But we thought the listening posts are good. We've tried some types of surveys, but just going back out on CVent and asking people what it is they want, including that as a routine, which is not something we found that people are routinely doing. But I think it may be something that we can do to find out what people need and want.
Thank you, Jesse, for responding to Bettina's request, because what we realize is we do have some new volunteers that have joined during the pandemic, and they haven't had a chance to participate in listening posts. So thank you for posting that. Deborah, I just wanted to acknowledge that because I knew you may not have seen that.
No, and that's fine. And I did want to say too, I know that a lot of people are getting started in their speakers bureaus, and a lot of that had been done by virtual. And I know I've been doing it by virtual, and this past week, I had the opportunity to do an in-person with a virtual Zoom link and have both things. So the problem is remembering that the camera may be behind you and staying away from keeping the back away from the people who are on Zoom, because there were people who came on Zoom. So we had a larger audience than we would have expected than just the people who were in person. But I get the sense we're going to probably have that in a number of places. And I know that's the way we reach out to some of our rural areas. And I've got to make sure that we remember to include all of them. So
It looks like Kelly has a contribution.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, going back to kind of the community, I think we've done some, it's starting to, I guess, pick up as everything else is, but listening to our community partners and working with them, and particularly our livable communities around the state. Our my colleague here, Doug Tayak, is our lead for that, and he keeps his hands in all things livable communities. So I think that there are some things that are starting to be suggested by those communities. Like the walkability, I'm not very well versed in livable communities, but the walkability index or scorecard, whatever they do, has been brought up by one of our cities. So things like that, where we can get our volunteers engaged through partner work, seems to be starting to pick up a little bit.
Looks good.
Deborah, I know you want to keep things on time, so I don't know if you want me to ask the final question or if you want to do the wrap up.
I think we can probably do the wrap up. It looked like, I thought Linda might have had something she wanted to say for a second. But in terms of, I just want to say a couple of things. One is that this is Elaine's last meeting. And I just want to say thank you to her for being a part of this group and for being so supportive. We have got her videos. She's going to live on forever, even after she moves out of AARP. So I just wanted to say thank you to Elaine. Sarah Bader was going to be here, but she's gotten hung up in traffic. And she is also leaving this week. She's been another person who has been very supportive, provides information, and we can share that information. And I'm so glad to have been a part of the journey with both of these young ladies. They have just been wonderful. And I wish Elaine and Sarah, in her absence, just tremendous lives going forward. Thank you very much. So thank you.
Deborah, can I just say thank you for saying that? And I want to thank this group. You know, we like to think there's a silver lining in the worst of situations, but I've gotten to know some of you better than I probably ever would by these monthly virtual meetings. You know, I mean, how often do we see each other in DC or Chicago or Texas or wherever we used to go? And you know me, I love to steal ideas. And so I've got 2 steals today. I heard ice cream mentioned repeatedly. So I'll be talking to our state director about that as an idea. And Jesse, I love that farmer's market thing. We have a ton of those in Connecticut. So for sure on that. I'm going to put my personal contacts in the chat. Feel free to stay in touch. Would love you to do that. And again, just thank you all for giving us ideas that we can put to work to make our state better and all of us better. So really have appreciated the experience, and I'll miss it.
Thank you very much, Elaine, and thank you to the rest of you. We've reached the end of our time. Thank you, Mary, for keeping us honest here. Have a great day. Try to, if you're in heat, try to stay cool. If it's too much water, try to stay out of it. Turn around, don't drown, as we say. So
Oh, good seeing
care.
everybody.
thank you all for
everyone.
showing up.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Bye.
Elaine. Thanks for
Bye.
everything.
Carry on. Mentor my replacement.
Oh. Bye-bye.
Bye. Oops.
Okay.